Portland Culinary Podcast and Portland Culinary Radio. I'm Stephen Shawman, your host. So excited today. We are talking with Brenda Crow. You help make the culinary magic and some beer magic happen at Little Beast Brewing, because Little Beast Brewing just opened a beer garden with a phenomenal menu. I know we talked, 5-6 months ago, and I said, man, when this gets open, I want to tell your culinary story because it's so phenomenal. I'm so glad you're here.
Well, thanks for having me.
I'm so glad we're here. This place is now open.
I know,
all
it's exciting.
All the blood, sweat, and tears you've put in, all of the effort. Oh, my gosh. I'm glad it's you,
It's
not
true.
me.
Yeah.
And we've got our special co-host, Don sitting in. How you doing, Don?
I'm just happy to be here.
Don knows all things when it comes to great food and great beer and great concerts. So he's all around amazing. Okay, standard questions on all my podcasts. Where were you born?
I was born in Portland at Good Sam Hospital.
Okay, and you grew up in Portland, but where'd you go to high school?
I went to school at Beaverton High School. So I grew up in like Sylvan area.
That's what?
We both went to the same high school.
Are you serious? I didn't know they had high school back when you were a kid.
Fighting those dang fire-breathing dragons on the way to school. It got to be really old. But I was really sad when the dinosaurs died.
Okay, what's the mascot at Beaverton High School?
It's a beaver, of course.
And Don, you went to the same high school. I've never had that happen before.
I think we were exactly 20 years apart.
Possible.
I graduated in 74.
I'm 93.
Mm-hmm.
So close.
Oh, 19, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me where your culinary journey began.
You know, I think the early inspiration was cooking at home with my family. Both of my parents enjoyed cooking and made it a lot of fun and kind of celebratory in a simple way. So, like, for example, if we'd made Chinese food, we had a whole set of Chinese plateware, and we'd make dumplings by hand. Or if we made Mexican food, they'd always turn on music that was thematic to the food we were making. So I think it just kind of created a beginning interest and love of being in the kitchen.
That sounds fantastic. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then where'd you go after high school?
After high school, I went to University of Colorado, and I majored in Spanish, in business taught in Spanish. It was focusing on translation and interpretation. And from there, that took me to southern Spain, where I first studied and then taught English. I stayed there for about 3 years.
And I bet that must have really impacted your culinary journey as well.
It did. It most certainly did. It was really inspiring, just how simple and beautiful their food was there, and really all over Europe. I mean, every town has a particular specialty, whether it be an ingredient such as jamon, or even a cookie, or a dish that they make in this one town only. I just loved it.
Okay, so you're in Sevilla teaching English. You're there for about 3 years. Mm-hmm. And then you go to culinary school for the first time. And where did you go to culinary school?
I did. I went to Florence, Italy, and I discovered, it's a beautiful place to be. I discovered that there was a culinary school that was actually a Cordon Bleu program. It was a couple of women who had finished the program in France and were authorized to run a program in Italy and award certificates of Cordon Bleu. And it was focused on Italian cooking, though. So basic cooking, regional cooking, and then pizza bread and focaccia. That's
fantastic. I had a friend, friends. They moved from Florence to Portland, Oregon with the hope of opening a food cart to build a brand, have a restaurant, and now they have the Barasca restaurant.
Oh, yeah, I love that place.
Yeah, phenomenal people and so cool. That was their influence.
Really
like, we're coming to Portland. We're going to make it happen. How much fun was that cooking school?
It was really fun. It was all taught in Italian, so there was kind of another layer of complexity. I have a very high level of fluency in Spanish, and honestly, transitioning into Italian wasn't that difficult. And then I had Mexican friends and Japanese friends, and all together we kind of pieced together what we didn't know. But it's very hands-on, so cooking isn't so much about the language as it is, the movements and the technique and learning it that way. So
any dishes that you learned back then that still resonate with you today that you might enjoy eating or making?
I do love making pasta. We learned the traditional a bolognese lasagna, and I love it. It's just pretty rich and unctuous, and a bechamel sauce and a handmade pasta. It's good.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. I love it. Okay, and then you came back to Portland, and you went into becoming a food buyer.
I did. My dad and I were searching for Spanish ingredients online. It was the late 90s, so that was kind of a novelty at the time. And my dad suggested that I be the person who buys the food professionally and brings it to the United States, which was an absolute revolution to me. Revelation. And it just kind of inserted this idea into my mind that I decided to pursue fervently to become a specialty food buyer.
That's fantastic. Okay, and then that led you to working for a cool company in San Francisco.
It did. So that brought me to San Francisco. I started working for a .com because that was the age of the .coms. It was the late 90s. It was a specialty food and cookware.com called Tavolo. I started on the buying team there. And then once they crashed with many others, I transitioned into working on the buying team at Dean & DeLuca, who had moved their corporate office to San Francisco.
Wow, that's an incredible culinary pedigree.
Yeah, it was working for Dean & DeLuca was really extraordinary. I got to taste and seek some of the most interesting and beautiful ingredients.
So my girlfriend grew up in the Northwest, but she spent about 20 years living in the San Francisco area. She absolutely loves to eat and drink and loves the food down there. Any places down there that still resonate with you? Next time you go to San Francisco, you got to go there again?
Yeah, I feel like Tartine Bakery should be on everyone's list. I do think that if you're going to be in San Francisco, you should get some good Mexican food. I love going to La Taqueria and getting the burrito, the carnitas burrito dorado.
I love it. And then you mentioned something about the oysters.
Yes, I love going to Tamales Bay and getting oysters. Marshall Store is my favorite, but it's just a stunning landscape. It will take your breath away, and you can just sit out there, look at the water and the horizon, and eat oysters.
Hog Island too, yeah.
Oh yeah, Hog Island's also.
All right, Don, you are
place.
well-traveled. You've been everywhere that's cool. I know you know all kinds of cool beer, but any fun food places you'd recommend for people when they head to San Francisco? Or food experiences?
Food experience? Well, by the way, Tartine is great. Just be prepared to wait a while to get seated. That place was mega monster popular. I have a different take on things. I like going to Asian food, and San Francisco is superb.
Yes, it is.
There's this one dim sum house. Actually, there's two of them, but it's both called Yang Sing. This incredibly good dim sum, and clear your credit card because it's not cheap.
It's not cheap.
Worth every dang penny.
I like to go there too every time I'm in town.
Yep.
Okay, and then your journey in San Francisco, you went to culinary school again.
I did. I went to culinary school again. There's a quote from Julia Child. She says, "Find something you're passionately." There's a quote from Julia Child. She says, "Find something you're passionate about and keep tremendously interested in it." And I am a firm believer in that, and I kind of naturally follow that course. I went to culinary school again, not necessarily to become a professional chef. I just was very passionate about it and had a kind of burning desire to learn more. So.
But your journey, your past journey, I mean, nothing goes wasted. It always feeds into the future. And how cool is it, those experiences taking care of you right now when you're years later preparing a menu for a little piece of beer? I mean, who would have ever thought?
All of these things that I've learned. And purchasing.
Yeah. Just,
knowing how to buy, how to be strategic about your buying and what sort of ingredients are even available. And
so that was a 2-year program at San Francisco City College?
It was a 2-year program. Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole different kind of intense culinary school than your first one.
It was much more nuts and bolts. We cooked for the cafeteria, so we were doing everything from cleaning a grease trap to being a short order cook. And at the time during culinary school, I was also I was selling caviar and truffles, so I'd bring some of those in sometimes, and foie gras. So I'd bring some of those in sometimes, and the class would get to get to discuss ingredients and learn how to use them and whatnot. So there was definitely a specialty component to it, and more. We certainly learned technique, but it was the reality of working in a kitchen is what we learned too, and that's really important.
And as cool as San Francisco is, eventually you came back to Portland. Why'd you move back to Portland?
It just drew me back. My family's still in the home that I grew up in, so I would come back to the same place. And as I got older, and San Francisco started to feel little crowded for me, Portland really just called to me. And it just kind of called me back.
And you're back home.
Back home.
And our palates and tummies are better off for it. Okay, so you spent some time at Nikki USA, and then you spent some time at Olympia Provisions. What was your cool job title there?
At Olympia Provisions, I was the national sales manager.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it was a really fun and exciting time. They were just ready to build their distribution network nationally. So I was charged with opening up those doors. And, I mean, there's still an exciting time, but we just had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah,
really
and I love me some Olympia Provisions. Last year, you had the special, opening party for Little Beast down at OP Worst. That was so much fun. And Don, you just don't like any kind of sausage stuff, do you?
Hates it. Hate it.
What did you say, sir? Sausage? Ja, ich möchte ein Wurst, bitte.
And then you left there and you sold some cheese.
I did. I went to work for a couple of Northern California artisan cheesemakers. I was their regional sales manager. Traveling can become a bit arduous, and it was nice to be. I managed the Pacific Northwest Rocky Mountain region, so it was nice to be closer to home, and worked from home too. But it was really fun to get more into cheese and to work with cheese buyers all over the West Coast.
And just in the past couple months, you've left that job and you're full-time now representing your own brand.
Yeah, Chuck and I started building this, over a year ago. And I've done whatever I can, whenever I can, to help and be a part of it. But it wasn't until beginning May that I was able to be full-time here. So, yeah.
Well, that's a dream come true for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. I have, for so long I've represented a lot of other great brands and companies. So it's really exciting to have this brand that we created ourselves and to put out into the world.
Yeah, and it's a phenomenal brand. I mean, I love all of it. I love the beer. I love the logos. I love the colors.
Yeah.
It's just phenomenal. Okay, so that brings us to a really fun question where did you first meet Charles? I know you guys have been together about 4.5, 5 years now, been married 3, but where was that first, that's the guy right there?
Well, I actually first met his beer. So I was at a feast event, and he was on the panel, but I was in the audience and tasted, I think it was Saison Brenda, when he was part of Logston. And it really just kind of blew my mind. I, up to that point, had mostly drank wine and cocktails, and I had never tried this type of beer. So it really was an eye-opener for me. And then I had some customers in town visiting when I was at Olympia Provisions, and Charlie Devereaux was in our office, and I was going to take them to explore areas outside of Portland. He suggested I take them on a beer tour of the Hood River Valley, and suggested I go see his friend Chuck at Logston, and the bell went off, and I was like, that beer, yes, let's go to Logston. So I brought him there, and I got out of the car and we met, and it was just kind of fireworks.
Isn't that a great story, Don?
Yeah, it's so cute.
He comes out of the brewery wearing his brewer's boots, and you're like, that's it. That's the man for me.
Yeah.
But he had everything else on too, right?
Yes, he did. I mean,
I thought you were really impressed.
There were other people on the tour.
but how fantastic is it that I met his beer first and fell in love with that? That's a beautiful. That's perfect. You can't write a better script than that.
So I remember you saying you weren't really much into beer before then. Mm-hmm. So what did you like about the beer then? Was it because it had wine-like qualities? Because I know you were a wine drinker.
It really was. It felt like this kind of experience that existed somewhere between beer and wine. The experience of drinking it. There was all these kind of complex flavors and layers of flavors, and it was something that you would sip and savor and not drink in large quantities. Even the glassware was a little bit different than what I was used to of, just having like a pint of IPA. So yeah, it was just something I'd never experienced before. And I'd never been to Belgium. I mean, for all the time I lived in Europe, I never visited Belgium. So.
No, you were down in wine drinking country.
I was not in beer country. I'll tell you that much.
You were in the land of Rioja and Tempranillo and Super
ice
Tuscans.
cold beer.
Well, lager.
Ice cold Cruz Campo.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Cruz Campo or Dreyer or Italian or Spanish mass-produced brand. It's a whole different world.
Correct.
By the way, there's now craft brewing in Italy.
Yes. I'm aware
a
of
lot
that.
of
and I
it's
haven't been back to
Belgian-inspired.
Italy since the 90s. So.
Yeah, you'd be. There's a bar in Rome I'd take you to, and you'd be going, what?
Wow.
Yeah, Fa. It's just called Fa. Well, it's actually got a lot of longer name.
Huh.
But you would just kind of go, how did this happen here?
We're going to make it back there sometime soon.
I hope so. You got a little business to keep.
Yeah, a little
building.
bit.
Okay, the cool thing is that, when I first did a Portland beer podcast up with Charles, because I'm a huge fan, I love him, I love his beer, he's brewing in Beaverton, things are going to come together, and I just did an update, Dawn and I did an update. That was last year's episode, this year, where what's happened so far, and you've got a new place, brewery. I've got Goosebumps, brewery that you're building, down in Clackamas, and we're sitting here, 34th and Division, at the Little Beast Brewing Beer Garden.
Correct.
Which is phenomenal. I love it. It's great, and the menu is killer. And how did it feel to be working on a menu and buying food for your own thing?
It was really fun. I did have a really good time putting together the menu. I mean, it's meant to be approachable. It's kind of food I like to eat. It has some specialty things on there, and in particular on the cheese and charcuterie section, and we've got some tinned fish. But then alongside that, just really approachable food that I think can be appreciated by a broad audience.
So you've got bar snacks, for example, some mixed nuts. We're going to try the smoked trout dip at the end of this podcast. So I love that I can start out with a beer and some snacks, a tinned fish. Last year I did a Portland Culinary podcast episode with John Gorm, and we talked about his La Ruta PDX festival, and he brought in some amazing tinned fish. And I see this here okay, I want to get the mussels, escobiche, I want to get the sardines. This is something that not everybody's going to know about. And I particularly, there's not a lot of overlap between craft beer drinkers and foodies. There's some, but not as much.
I have noticed that.
And so you're going to be taking craft beer drinkers, because this, your husband makes some of the best craft beer in Oregon, if not the West Coast, and you're going to be interested in things like tinned fish, which I absolutely love.
That's the hope here, is to really fuse those two worlds between beer and food.
So if you happen to be a fan of the Portland Beer Podcast, listen to this episode because you love Brenda and you don't know tinned fish. I know the foodies know it and eat it. Order one of these, have it. You'll be blown away. You'll love it.
Yeah, even just something simple. I mean, a lot of Americans grew up eating a tin of sardines with saltines. Who doesn't love that? Some people don't, but hey, I think it's really delicious. And so we bring in a particular sardine that's from a company actually I used to work for that's they're based out of Washington, but they import Spanish foods. And it's just a beautiful sardine with lemon in a tin. And then we serve it alongside saltine crackers and a Calabrian chili butter.
Oh my gosh, I want that. Don't you, Don?
No, I've already had it.
But I might want it right now,
simple.
though.
I mean, that's the thing about these ingredients.
It can be arranged. Anything can be arranged. You mentioned, growing up in the States, and you usually can get the tin sardines in the supermarket, and you have an expectation when someone says tin sardines. But the tin sardines from Spain and Portugal, the tin fish in general, even tin shellfish.
Correct.
It's like, I don't know how they do it, but it's a level.
It's exceptional.
It's a step above.
It's many steps above.
I've noticed that about canned foods, like the French.
Yeah.
How they do canned foods, that makes them so very good.
I know. I keep waiting for somebody to do this on the Oregon coast because we have the resources.
Yeah.
But
it's mostly process and technique.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's mostly the processing equipment.
So you've got a charcuterie board, a cheese board, a cheese and charcuterie board, and I see on here some fromage fort. Would that be that vegetarian, vegan?
Yeah. I am not a vegan, but I've kind of fell in love with this quote-unquote cheese because it's really tasty. I love cashews. They're very rich and buttery. And it turns out that they make a really good kind of substitute for a cheese, and then we splash in some booze into that, and it makes like a kind of cheesy spread that is for both vegans and non-vegans. It's really tasty.
Yeah, friends of mine, Nick and Corinne, used to own the cheese plate PDX food cart, and they had a fromage fort.
With cashew cheese?
Yeah, that was phenomenal. So I saw this. Okay, this is fantastic. I love it. Okay, and you're going to have a lot of seasonal stuff. So the menu will come and go and change. But one seasonal thing I want to mention, talking about this pink shrimp roll.
Yeah, I just love Oregon pink shrimp, and I also love like lobster rolls, and it's kind of I think that an appropriate take on that sort of dish, but using Oregon ingredients. It's got some tarragon, some fresh tarragon. We put Kewpie mayonnaise in it because that's a simple ingredient that has kind of elevates the mayonnaise ingredient. It's got a really nice mouthfeel and some flavor, and then lemon juice and lemon zest, and then it pairs really well with Bess, our tart wheat ale. Which has a lot of like kind of lemon wheat and pineapple notes, and the two of those together are kind of a home run.
And if you ever get a chance to put a couple different places at Cascade a couple years ago, I had a Dungeness crab roll.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal.
Exactly.
And I could have one of those with some of Charles's beer and live happily ever after.
Yes, that is on my long list menu.
Yeah, I can imagine how much fun it is. I bet the list is huge.
It is. It's like 5 pages long, and I just kind of like pick through it and think about what makes sense. So, yeah.
All right, to close out this podcast, we're going to try some of this smoked trout dip. And Don, what's the beer that we have paired with this?
This is Farah that you had us pour, right? Yeah.
This is Farah, correct.
So Farah is sort of the slightly tart farmhouse ale. It's one of the mainstay flagships, one of the first 2 beers that really went to market from Little Beast, and has been enduring so far.
Mm-hmm. It's my go-to. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I certainly try all the beers, but the one I always go back to continually is Farah. Yeah.
Yeah, when I did the Portland Beer Podcast with Charles last year, we drank Farah and Bess, and then Dawn and I just did the update I mentioned, and we drank the 2 new beers in your flagship line, Animal Family, and what was the first one?
The Pater?
Pater's more of a thing for C2BB. I think it was the Femme Rouge.
Yeah, Femme Rouge.
Yes,
the Femme Rouge and Animal Style. So those are good.
We also tasted the Black Cap Raspberry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh, that's good. Okay, but this is the Farah, and so tell us about this dip. I can't wait. I'm going to dig into it.
This is all Tyler, our chef here, Tyler Otten. He just previously came from Wares, working with Joe there. Super talented, really fun to work with. The two of us just had an absolute synergy from day one, so I'm really thrilled to have him be part of the team. He's integral to this menu too, and this is his recipe. We just get some really good, simple smoked trout, and then essentially make a scratch mayonnaise, and then incorporate. You make a scratch mayonnaise with the trout, and then kind of fold in more trout, and then garnish it with some pickled mustard seeds. And we like to just eat it with potato chips.
That's what's in the middle there.
So yeah.
Gives it a remoulade character that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it. It's so simple but elegant.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's really what we're trying to do here. I mean, the foods that we're putting out are not extremely complex. There's not tons of ingredients in one dish. It's meant to just kind of highlight something simple and good.
Don, this is so good. You better talk. I just gotta keep eating.
You'll notice the pairing. The Farah's got just this slight bit of tartness, a little bit of acidity, and we've got this dip, mayonnaise, a fair bit of unctuousness.
Yes, that's the word I was saying.
Yeah, it's rich and
rich, a bit fatty in the mouth. Mm-hmm. And the idea always with something like this is pair it with something a little bit acidic. You go to dim sum, you have tea. You have something like this, a nice, rich mayonnaise-y smoked trout dip. And there you go. And you have it with a beer that's got just that right touch of acidity to offset it and help cleanse the palate.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good pairing.
I love it. I love the menu. You've got salads, and of course you got your plates, which is where the pink shrimp roll is right now. What I like is that your emphasis on seasonal. So I come, twice a month, and every so often there's be something new on the menu based on what's available.
Yeah, and that's very much in tune with our beers. I mean,
yes,
we make our beers in the same manner. I mean, you have to wait longer to have them once they actually go through the process of make.
Yeah, roughly 12 of your own beers on tap, and 4 of them are the flagship, which means the other 8 are going to come and go and
Correct.
come and go, and I love that.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Well, I'm so excited that you guys have gotten here to this phase. I think this is. I know you put blood, sweat, and tears, and it feels like years of effort. But from my perspective, to me, this is only the beginning. I can't wait to see where you guys go from here, and I love this space. Dawn, how cool is this outdoor patio? Oh, my gosh.
It really is.
Well, I saw this in its previous incarnation, and I hope it wouldn't lie fallow. So I'd call this very serendipitous that Little Beast was able to take this over.
Yeah, this feels just Little Beastie, for lack of a better. It just feels like you guys.
Yeah.
Well, you see the sun coming out, and wait till you get here in the afternoon, and all these outdoor tables are filled, and people will even be sitting out on the lawn. You can come inside, get a blanket, park yourself on the lawn if you want, get out a good book and a glass of beer and have life.
Yeah, and we're building just some bench seating on the front porch. So we're just trying to take advantage of what great atmosphere all these different components of this place has.
Yeah, what I love is phenomenal beer and then also phenomenal food.
Yeah.
That's just so awesome. So, Brenda, it was a delight to have you on the
Thanks
Portland
for having me.
Culinary Podcast.
Yeah,
So cool
you.
to hear your story. Culinary School twice. I absolutely love it. And who would think? Same high school as Dawn. Just separated by about 72 years. So.
Yeah, by the time you got to high school, the dinosaurs were pretty tame.
Well, I wish you and Charles all the best.
Thank you so much.
All right. Cheers, everyone.